Welcome to the show, Brandon Bozarth. I used to say Brandon Bozart, and then I realized
Yep, it
that's not
happens
true.
all my life. Is it true?
But it's spelled TH, so everyone should get that. But I don't know why I didn't get that at first, but
Yeah, some sort of common optical illusion or something. I don't know.
yeah. So, can we start by? I want to ask you about your background. If you could just tell us a little bit about your background and then
Mhm,
what led into your spiritual awakening.
yeah. So to make a long story short, I um, left. I dropped out of college to pursue network marketing. At the time, I was very lost and depressed and kind of directionless. I was big into sports and after sports and not really being able to find something I'm passionate about. Um, yeah, I was just in a place of really looking for something. So I found network marketing or MLM at the time, and I pursued that, became a top income earner in a smaller company, and did fairly well. And essentially, it led me to doing all of the things that I thought I wanted to do. Travel different parts of the world, hang out with people that have millions of dollars in their Rolls Royces, and build a team of hundreds of people, have a certain level of status. It was like the typical pursuit of happiness, being at the top of a mountain, but still feeling empty and feeling like there's something missing, and really like this deep sense of this is not really who I am. And I had a moment where I just decided to drop all of it and do the opposite of what I was doing for years. And what I was doing was seeking uh, really myself, or validation, love, through achievement, money, sex, women, just the typical, especially for men, male archetype of, go be successful and desired. And so I really started to just say, I'm going to do the opposite of that. And I put out a newsletter one day, and the newsletter ended up landing in the inbox of a woman moments before she was going to take her own life. And, at the time, it was like I was always geared towards spirituality. Even since I was 16, my older brother gave me I think maybe I was even younger, gave me a Deepak Chopra tape on healing your own headache. And I remember being maybe 13 actually, and having a headache and listening to this tape and then healing the headache and going, okay, there's definitely something here. And I had these kind of mentors that would come in and out of my life when I was really young. And so my newsletter was just about everything that I've learned on my journey so far. And that particular newsletter was entitled, I'm Excited to Die. And this woman was sitting in her car, uh, contemplating taking sleeping pills, going into the ocean, and going to sleep. And her guides, she's a renowned medium in Australia, her guide said, turn on the radio, before you take those pills, just turn on the radio. And she turned the radio on, and a song said, word for word, you should stay a little bit longer. And so she stopped. She started crying. I have to stay. I have to face all of my fear. And then, right in the next moment, got my email that was titled, I'm excited to die. And she responded and said, I'd love to work with you. And at the time, I wasn't advertising myself as a coach or a facilitator. I was just sharing because I was so disconnected. And so it's like I got to the very end of my not self identity that I just said, I'm going to share what I'm excited about. And I have no idea where it's going to go. I'm just going to see what happens. Like I'm going to surrender to life and let life inform me instead of me trying to inform life. And so she responded, and I saw the email, and I said, I couldn't find a reason to not support this woman. And I just said, okay, let's get on a call. And that call was profoundly transformative for her and for me. And she became my first client. I remember her asking, well, how much do you charge? And I just looked at my bills that were way past due, and I was like, that much. And we worked together for the next 6 months. And two things really stood out. Number one, where I had a natural insight or gift or talent at just being someone that can reflect back to other people parts of their own unconscious mind that they can get in touch with and heal and question and transform. But it also showed me where I still had so much work to do because I never was in a, I don't know, official way. I was never officially kind of initiated into coaching or facilitating or supporting others with ending mental and emotional suffering. So that led me to doing some trauma work with men. It was men's work initially with one of my good friends and mentors at the time, Javon Langford. And it was really through working with Javon and traveling to different, we traveled through Europe and we were doing retreats for not just men and women, that I really got to see someone who I considered very masterful just facilitate. And people would enter the event contracted and tight and, in resistance, and they would leave expanded and reborn. And that really sparked me going, okay, I want to learn what the source and the absolute source of suffering is, and the most effective and simple ways to move beyond suffering. And so ultimately that led me to the path of self-inquiry and non-duality. And I had, I'll just share one experience because I haven't had necessarily just one awakening experience that led to everything, that I'm doing or to where I am now. I've had several, but one that was the most profound and I'd say the most simple was when I was laying in bed and I laid back and I asked myself the question, or I said to myself, oh man, I'm so tired. And then I asked myself the question, who is the one that's tired? It's like the typical Muji, Eckhart, all these spiritual teachers. Who's that I? And whether it was the exhaustion of my mind at the time and the unavailability for a certain amount of efforting to answer the question, I just allowed the question to be the answer and didn't need to search or seek or mentalize any of it. And I, just by asking the question, entered this very vast kind of ocean of peace. And then from that, this emergent sense of joy in my solar plexus felt like the sun moving through my solar plexus lit me up, and I started to burst out laughing. And it was funny because my partner Ashley next to me was sleeping, and so I stopped myself from laughing because I thought, how funny would it be at 11:30 at night for me to just just start laughing? I mean, she's gonna think I'm possessed or something. So
In a
I'm
good
holding
way.
my laughter in, and I'm just vibrating now like a sixth grader in class trying to not laugh at their best friend. I'm like laughing and laughing, and in that moment, I had this deeper realization of a couple things. Number one, that joy and peace was causeless, meaning I didn't have to do anything. It seemed like I had to ask the question and inquire, but the question and the inquiry gave me permission to sit back into myself, to in a sense take a break from the thinking mind that's always creating past and future. And so it wasn't that I had to effort and cause it, it's actually the releasing of effort that sometimes feels like an effort. Rupert Spira uses this example of if you squeeze your hand really hard for a long time, when you open it, it actually takes a little effort. But it's not really effort you're feeling, it's the relaxing of a previously held effort that you're feeling. So it's actually a type of release. And so I noticed that, when I don't try, and I've had many other experiences, but this one was just so simple. When I don't try to figure anything out or to seek an answer or to get happiness or peace, in the absence of all of that seeking, there is a peace, and that peace is like soil. And sometimes from that soil emerges just causeless joy and happiness. And there's no experience, person, or thing that can actually give me that. And that realization is great because you're now self-sourcing. You're realizing you've always been and can only be the source of happiness. But that's phase one. And so that to me was like an undeniable experience that I would never, it can never leave me. Phase two, which I'm still in, and I believe most of us will be in for the rest of our life, is now taking that experience and integrating it into our life, not just staying on the mountaintop, but coming back into our life and going, oh, where am I still allowing my conditioned mind to create this identity that veils that awareness from me? Where am I allowing myself to get so captured by experience that that vastness of being temporarily closes into a small, separate, finite self? And the actual, recognition and giving attention to those parts of myself, which can feel incredibly painful at times. People call it vulnerability or just honesty, transparency. It's really merging entirely with those kind of identities of the separate self. That is more of like the tantric approach, not trying to move away and question it and heal it, not healing the ego, but holding the ego in full attention and love. Actually, just like if you bring a finger closely to your head, eventually you bring it so close that you can't even see it, that it disappears. And so the integration of that into my life has been what I've been most interested in, is how can each kind of area of my life reflect the knowing of my being.
Mm. Yeah, I love how you self-reflect a lot, like on your Instagram. You get really personal, and you often write or talk about things that you go through, and admit that you've been maybe, you had to as well, like think about how you reacted in a certain like, because a lot of us may look up to people like you and think, oh, he's got it all sorted out, he totally gets everything. And then it's like, it's nice to know that you are also on this journey, and we're on the journey together, so that everyone's like always evolving and growing. So that's very interesting. But did you feel like when you went through um, this awakening process, or, did you feel like you had the backup from your family and friends, or do you feel like you had to like take a step back from people that you loved, or how was that process for you?
Well, the awakening that I referred to is more recent. That's when things got very simple and direct for me. But I had other awakenings where I just was able to kind of see the picture of my life from outside of the frame, and really question who I think I am, and what I think I want, and have different types of collapses of the core of what's motivating all my life. And so I've had incremental awakenings to that. And in the early stages, I always had support from my parents. Now, what does that look like? Hey, honey, yeah, we totally trust and support what you do, but you should go get a job. That's what we think. So it's like, yes, they love me. Yes, we've stayed in connection. I have great relationships with my parents, but I also, some of my deepest traumas from my parents, and from a very surface level, you go, why would Brandon have trauma? He grew up, his parents are still together. He grew up in a great home, but the subtleties of trauma create kind of this unknowable observation where I can't know how someone was affected by something in the house. And, my older brother was addicted to drugs for 8 years, and we weren't allowed to talk about it. So I learned that telling the truth is dangerous and can break up a family. So I learned to hide things. My mom is very traditional: go to school, get a degree, work 9 to 5, work for 40 years, retire, save. And so she was so protective over us that I developed this coping pattern of going, well, I have to make myself available to you so much. I have to always communicate, check in. Like the a large part of my daily experience was being available for my mother so she could feel safe. Like she's being a good mother. So I learned that I don't get to have a lot of time for me. So my reaction to that was to distance myself and try to go create as much time for me as possible through valuing my independence. Oh, I'm going to be an independent person, and that's going to prove that, I'm free, I can be me, that I am capable. Because and I largely interpreted my mother's care for us, which was really coming from some fear and some other things, but her care, I interpreted that as, oh, I must be not capable myself. If she has to be so involved in my life just so I can be safe, I must not be able to be that on my own. So I must be inadequate, So it's like all of these stories were automatic assumptions, and that's what makes them innocent. You can't find a moment as a kid where you just chose to go, oh, I must be inadequate. It's an automatic reflex because we'll just use the conditioning of our unique mind as the blueprint and go, okay, how does this make sense? Well, let me run it through my mind, and my mind might be a certain shape of conditioning, and now I run it through, and that shape produces the result called you're inadequate. So it's just an automatic absorbing of environment. So when I started to do things very different, started to have my awakening and go in a totally different path, really, than anyone in my family. At first, it was a lot of fear of I'm not going to be supported, a lot of projection, How are you going to be supported? What about your bills? What about this? And a constant worry voice. And of course, I realized that was my voice that I have never addressed. I didn't know that early on. So I just thought I need to distance myself from all this worry and control and always needing to be available. And I need to distance myself. But I realized it was my voice that I didn't deal with. So when you say, were they supportive? It's like, yes, they were supportive in showing me the voices that I haven't dealt with yet.
Yeah.
They weren't sitting there going, you're just doing great and I love you and what do you need? But that's not what I actually needed. And a lot of us think I need the support of people just cheering me on. But what we need is reality as it is, because there are no mistakes in reality. So what I need is reality. When I accept that, then I can see why. We think it's the other way around. I need to know why reality is this way, and then I'll accept it. But I had to get to a point where I go, okay, I accept that that's just how she is. And actually my resistance is not coming from her. It's coming from the way I'm interpreting her behavior and what I'm making it mean about me that I'm not fully getting in touch with. So as I started to get in touch more and more and more with the conditioning of my mind, and to question those thoughts and to experience who I am on the other side of them, then I had no defense towards any of it. And I could see the innocence in where they were at in their process. And that produced a different version of Brandon, so to say. Mm-hmm. And so I go, have I been supported by them? Oh yeah, of course. I couldn't be who I am now without them, because they didn't give me what I wanted, which is what I needed. And that's true for every parent. That's what makes them the perfect parents.
Yeah,
because then we have to learn how to give it to ourselves. And if we really get honest, we go, would I rather have got it from them, or would I rather have this lesson that can never leave me, that provides a sense of being enough, being adequate, being safe, secure, and free? Which one would I rather have? That unconditional knowing from myself, or my mother's opinion?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'd like to move on to where you started channeling Shaka. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
Shaka.
Yep.
I find that really interesting. So, yeah, tell us how you started channeling Shaka, and then, yeah, who he is. Like, what is he?
Yeah. I mean, at the ultimate level, he's another version of myself. What I've received and been told by other channels is that he's technically a future version of myself, a counterpart. And all that means is we share an oversoul. So to break down the incarnational process in a linear sequence, which is the only way our minds can understand
Our human
non-linear
minds,
reality.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to make it linear. Then he would be my future self. But in the ultimate level, he's existing here and now in a different version of reality or different density. And I
How
had a
far
session
into the future is he?
about 300 years. Hmm. Sometimes more, because they can go up and down their timeline. So sometimes he's 350, 320, 400. Sometimes I'm speaking to 150-year-old Shaka, or 80-year-old, or 270. They live in the fourth density that's shifting into fifth. So they are primarily light and non-physical, but still have some physicality. So the characteristics of non-physical reality, which the closest glimpse that we get to is in something like a lucid dream, is what they're experiencing all the time. But even that, we can't really understand it, again, because we have our finite mind in physical reality. So they can, yeah, it's like their reality moves more at the speed of thought. So I want to be here, shift, and then they're there, similar to like how we are in a lucid dream. I want to experience myself at this age, that age, and it's just seamless. They're consistently being their most passionate and authentic selves, and because of that, reality is responding with perfect synchronicity that's guiding them, where to go, what to say, and perfect timing. But because they're still have some degree of physicalness, there's still a forgetfulness. They still don't know exactly what's going to happen, and therefore it can't be boring. So there's just a constant adventure of witnessing explosions of synchronicity and bringing them a consistent surprise and joy. That's what I've learned about their experience. But how it was brought about was, I always was interested in channeling and channeled material since I was maybe 21. I found Bashar around that age, who's channeled by Daryl Anka, and his information completely changed my life. And I started reading other channel texts. I mean, different Pleiadian texts and all of these ones, but then even texts like A Course in Miracles, which you can say is channeled, but not from an extraterrestrial. If you were to ask Helen, she'd say it was from Jesus Christ. There's a whole series called, I'm forgetting what it is. It's another series with Jesus, channeled from Jesus. And some of these texts are just so profound and beautiful, and they've changed my life. And so I always had this thought, man, how great would it be if I could channel and kind of access that frequency, that type of energy that informs the words on these pages, that is just absolutely like puts me right into a state of beauty and awe. And I did a session with Bashar, which is incredibly hard to book. I mean, it took me maybe 4 years to finally get a session with him. He puts something out on his website. Okay, sessions are available, and in 2 weeks, an entire year is booked out. So somehow I landed on the page, right place, right time, booked a session, met him in person at his home in LA, and asked the question, why am I so drawn to channeling? Why am I so drawn to you? I feel like I channel you. And he goes, well, you do in a parallel reality. We have that connection, but that's not why you feel so connected to me. I say, why? He goes, you have two counterparts in our society. One of them is available to channel if you're excited about that. If you have the desire, then this individual is compatible for that. And I just lit up. My body lit up. And so I took that from that conversation, hired a channeling coach, Tyler Ellison, who channels Ryok, and we worked together for maybe 4 months. And I went through I had a near-death experience. I had all of this synchronicity through Shaka and the symbolism of the spider, or the 8 circles within a larger circle representing the higher mind, or perfect perception, right? Seeing through the 8, or the infinite. And these different symbols and dreams. I was waking up. I would get up out of bed. This happened one time, and I looked around in the room, and my room was a perfect circle, and there was just red glowing light in the distance. And I go, where the heck am I? And I wasn't afraid, but once I realized I wasn't in my room, I got really afraid, and then boom, I'm back in my room, and I'm standing, and Ash is like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. And I'm having these dreams of spiders entering my third eye, and I remember Bashar told me the energy of the spider is very similar to an extraterrestrial, because they seem so foreign to all other life forms on your planet. I mean, these spiders can string a web and tune the web to a specific acoustic frequency and have every single thread be a slightly different tone. So when something lands on it, they can hear the tone and know exactly where to go and feel the vibration. And the 8 eyes and the 8 legs are just so foreign to us that I had to overcome my fear of spiders to really channel Shaka. So eventually I got, through doing my own kind of inquiry work,
Yeah.
was able to hold a tarantula
Oh, well
without any
done.
fear. Yeah, just my
I'm
heart wasn't
also
pounding.
terrified.
I was at the beginning. It took me like 2 or 3 minutes to like regulate and question my mind and then be able to hold it. And anyway, through a series of events and training myself to shift my brain state into gamma through breathing and concentration and relaxation, I just started channeling for people. And all I can really say about the channeling is I get into the state, thoughts arise, and I say the thoughts.
Mm.
That's my experience. It feels kind of like I'm in a dreamy space, like a daydream, or kind of like a trance type of space, or kind of like if I'm in the back of a theater and I know there's a performance happening, but I'm in the back of the theater and time goes by very quickly. And when I come out, kind of like a dream, I get a general idea of what happened, but it's kind of foggy. If people remind me of things, I'll remember it. And it seems to have served people very well.
Yeah, it's very cool to see you channel him. Um, but like, can you at any point during a session where you're channeling him, can you just stop it whenever you want to? It's like, do you have that
Yeah, I mean, pretty
power?
much, pretty much, yeah. If I really, like, there hasn't been a time that I've needed to do that. I mean, I've had really funny scenarios of being traveling, staying at friends' homes where their relatives are there, and I'm channeling, and they come in the room, and the part of me comes in for a moment and is like, I need to get out of this because this person's asking me questions and this and that. And I might go through an incredibly fast process of like, what am I feeling? Embarrassment? Am I feeling what am I feeling?
Mm.
And like go through this really quick because of the state that I'm in, really quick process, let that go and continue to channel. That's been the majority of the times. But can I pull myself out of it? Totally. I could pull myself out of it. I just really haven't needed to do that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might, get a little bit scared to channel because they might have that thought. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've thought about it.
there's a
I've
lot
been
of
like,
outdated beliefs about channeling that
yeah,
is kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like just archaic beliefs, like
yeah.
a being enters your body and they're in complete control. None of that happens. It's impossible. Nothing can enter your body. Our body and this reality is all contained within us, within our awareness, within consciousness. So how could something outside of consciousness go into consciousness if consciousness is infinite? There's no apparent limitation to consciousness. So what's happening is I'm attuning myself to a certain frequency, matching that frequency like two tuning forks, and this Vesica Pisces, this third person, is being expressed. It's not fully Shaka, it's not fully Brandon, it's somewhere right in the middle. And so that's what you're getting.
Yeah. You say he's from the future or future you. Is he this is it still Earth that where his home planet is, or
No, his planet,
have they moved?
yeah, according to them, it's a planet called Eshakani or Esasani, which means place of living light. Um, and they are about, what is it, 500 light years in the direction of Orion. But they are slightly out of phase of our reality because the density that they're in. So if we went there, we wouldn't see anything. But if we shifted into that density, then there would be a planet there, and that would be where they are. But technically, they're extraterrestrial, but they're not really alien to us. They are a combination of gray DNA, which is a parallel version of the human race, another version of Earth that almost destroyed themselves and mutated themselves to turn into these gray beings that have been called the Zeta Reticulum, or the grays. Dolores Cannon did all of this regression work and had hundreds and hundreds of people report the same type of beings in their abductions that were really taking place in the 70s and 80s. And it was proven that these weren't dreams and they weren't hallucinations, because you could see the difference in the brain activity. So you have thousands of people reporting similar things, similar beings, and these encounters, and where they're waking up during them and they weren't supposed to. And these grays would often say, "I am you." That was reported by a lot of people. And what that actually meant is, no, I'm literally another version of you from a different version of Earth that failed, and we're coming here to rebalance our own energy and to help you not go down the same path that we went down, because that's the only way we can survive. So through hybridizing with us, this is the story, the third hybrid race of, first there was grays and humans that created there's the Maz and then it was grays and humans, about 25% human, 75% gray. That was the first phase of hybridizing. That created the Mazani, which is the second hybrid race. And then the 50-50 of human and gray created the Esasani, or now in their evolved form, Eshakani, which is Bashar, Shaka, Ryok, Bella, who else do it? So I think all I know are all Esasani channels, or all Esasani hybrids. But technically they're about 50% human and 50% gray, which is a parallel version of human. So they can be considered like our cousins.
It's cool. I love talking about this stuff. So do you agree with everything that Shaka says? Like, have you ever come back from a channeling and been like, what the hell was that?
No, not really. I mean, I can't say I agree with everything that he says, because I don't know everything that he says. I've put out 70 hours of stuff of channeled material in the last year and a half, and I've only retained what has been relevant for me. So anything that I've retained, I agree with because it's helpful for me. And what if it's not helpful? I just really don't remember it.
Yeah. Okay. So I heard you talking in some other podcast about parallel universes, like quantum physics, parallel universes, and in regards to the new Earth or new energies of Earth. Can we, like, is there a new Earth now? And if so, can we get there now, or how does that work? I was blown away when I heard you talking about this in another podcast. So
yeah,
if you'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, so it depends on how deep we want to go on this. Like, for the sake of simplicity, I'll start with a simple point of view, which says that the universe that you're in is completely your experience, I should say, of the universe that you're in, which is the only reality that you can experience, is your experience. So to say that there's a reality and then there's your experience of that reality is to try to say there's a reality outside of your experience. And what that means is a reality outside also of your awareness, because you can't have experience without awareness. It's like if I were to ask you, go have an experience that you're not aware of and come back and tell me about it. You couldn't do it. So your experience of reality is reality. It's your reality. There's no way outside of that. So when you say, okay, there's a new Earth, how do we access the new Earth? Well, the version of Earth that you're experiencing is determined by how you're filtering reality. So it'd be like having yellow tinted glasses and going, okay, I really want to experience a new Earth. But if you keep on the yellow tinted glasses, you're only going to experience a yellow reality, right? So the most direct access to the new Earth is to change your perception of what is now to one where there might be resistance and fear and separation, to one where there's not, where there's unity and connection and compassion. And that is the new earth. It's not like a new earth can arrive and then I'm going to become aware of it and go, oh, here it is. Now I'll feel happy. It's the other way around. I'm going to shift any perception, any thought that is creating the identity of this separate self structure where I'm separate from reality. I'm finite. I'm vulnerable. I can die. I'm temporary. I'm guilty. Whatever it is, that's what's creating all of the pain that we see reflected back to us in the world. So getting to that core is going to be much more effective than just breaking down the physics of it, because I can break down the physics of it and then someone go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. There are these parallel realities and we're always shifting through realities and da-da-da. Okay, but how do I do it? You see? So what's most important is to understand that there is no such thing as a new earth that can come from somewhere. Where would it come from? There's only right now in your experience. Am I experiencing the earth in the am I experiencing a new earth, which might feel like happiness, joy, connection, unconditionally, meaning I'm not waiting for conditions to change, because then I'm still thinking that my happiness, my freedom is somewhere out there. So I'm still a separate being. So I'm still going to be creating evidence of separateness being reflected back to me, just like in a dream. If I get really afraid, if I'm lucid in a dream and I start getting really afraid, what happens to my dream? It starts reflecting it back to me. If I stop getting afraid, then what happens in the dream? It stops reflecting that back to me. Well, that's essentially the quality of our physical reality too. It's just not as instant. It's a little more delayed.
Yeah.
So that's the short, more direct answer.
Yeah.
Unless you're interested in some of the physics of it, but this is like probably
well, you
what
did
people are
speak
wanting
about
to
it,
know.
and that speaks to me, but I'm not sure it will speak to everyone else. I thought it was really cool with the whole millions per second you swap them
Films, the
between.
film strip. I'll
Yeah.
just share that in
Yeah.
really quickly. So Bashar has talked about this, and it's very consistent with other teachings. So I really, I can't say I know this to be true, but it does explain some things. So perhaps it's true. Reality. Think of every moment. When I say this moment, now that moment's gone, right? If I could take that moment and capture it in a screenshot, and I do that with every moment, I start creating like a film strip. When I pass that film strip through my consciousness, and I link it together in my mind, for example, if I go, yeah, right before this call, I walked in the room and then I sat down and then I talked to Heidi. Well, is that the reality that I'm currently experiencing, or am I just stringing together realities to create a timeline? So what's creating that time in that moment? Is it me, or is it something outside of me? It's always me. I'm syncing together because the conditioning of my mind, moment by moment by moment by moment, and this moment caused that one, caused that one, caused that one, but even cause is a thought. So cause and effect is not actually real from the absolute level. It's real from our experience. But if we really investigate experience, we go, well, who's creating cause and effect? Well, we are causing the effect. And so if reality is in a sense shifting, the rate of change, meaning almost like a refresh button from moment to moment to moment, according to Bashar, and there is some crossover on this on like Planck scale and some other things in quantum physics that Nassim Haramein has talked about. There seems to be some similarities. About 10 to the 43rd times per second, reality is shifting. So imagine that film strip going so fast that you can't even recognize it. You stand there and you look in the mirror and it looks like you're the same person. But your consciousness has just allowed for billions and billions and billions of versions of you to be present and then dissolve and present and dissolve. And it's like doing this expansion and contraction, which really is the source of the Big Bang. That is the Big Bang. We're constantly big banging.
Big banging.
Everything. Reality is. So when we break continuity, meaning we start to question our sense of self, our identity, then if we stop, like, for example, if I go into my past and I change my perception about something that once created pain and separation that now creates love and joy and gratitude, then I'm relating to that thing differently. So now I have to, by definition, relate to the future differently, because past pain is informing my future hurt. So my past pain is going to say, hey, in order for you to not get hurt again, avoid these things. But if I collapse that pain, then I'm not trying to avoid anything. And it's very different. If I'm living my life trying to not avoid something, then I'm driving, but I'm always looking in the rearview mirror. So I have to hit things. I have to get hurt, you know?
Yeah.
So instead of looking in the rearview mirror, I now look forward. And what do I look forward to? Excitement, joy, passion. And that's a totally different person driving. And that's why all of a sudden, one little shift can break this past of continuity that's creating this future, and you can shift to another version of reality that's more representative of that state of being. And how that shows up is through synchronicity. Oh man, I was just in the right place at the right time. You know, I wonder why that happened. Well, I shifted, and now reality is reflecting that shift back in me. You know, this happens so much with relationships. We go, oh yeah, I just allowed myself to love the part of me that's really angry, and now I feel more compassion. And all of a sudden, the person now has compassion for you and for them. And the moment before, they didn't. So are you really recognizing a shift in them, or are you recognizing a shift in you? I mean, the answer, of course, is both. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah. No, it did. um, yeah, I find that very fascinating. Um, and the whole Big Bang happening so many times. It's like
Yeah. Well, think
never
about
the
it.
same
There can't,
person. It's awesome.
yeah, there's a Big Bang in the past that people talk about, but it's like we can't actually know something if it's not occurring in our awareness. So we have these theories and whatnot, but if everything here is here and now, okay, there could be a Big Bang that we're creating in the past and that we're connecting to and we're creating evidence for. Okay, but the Big Bang, and we can take everything and say, where is that happening now? You know, and we can say that with anything. You know, like if we're creating it in the past, it's probably because we have this deeper intuition that it's actually occurring right now, or we couldn't be really accessing it if it was truly in the past. Well, we couldn't access it in the now because it'd have to be somewhere else besides the now. You know.
Yeah. So you have one-on-ones, like people can contact you and stuff, and you also have retreats
Yeah.
as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about your retreats?
Sure, yeah. We don't have any retreats planned yet. However, we have a tentative plan for, let's see, February, March, April, May or June, somewhere in that time. Definitely for the second half of the year, we're going to be doing several retreats. So look out for that. The retreats are amazing, 5 days. It's the deepest transformational work that we do. Usually, when we have some free time, we'll integrate some channeling there, but it's more focused again on healing, on transformation, and on really just coming back to yourself, like ending seeking or suffering. And so that's one area. We have we have a program that's open right now, a online community called Miracle Makers. Miracle being a term borrowed from A Course in Miracles, which means a shift in perception. So that community focuses on learning inquiry, how to stop, feel our emotions, get to the truth of our immediate experience, that we're not in any danger, and then to go into our belief system or our identity and actually reveal our unconscious mind, our unconscious conditioning to ourselves, bring it into the light, and let it dissolve through our certain process of inquiry. And we practice on each other in that group. And what's great is there's sometimes where I just get to watch, and the members are just supporting each other, and all these miracles and shifts and openings are occurring. And then they come back and they go, oh, this thing changed my life, or that thing. And you never know what's going to change in someone's life, because it's just going to reflect back to them in the way that's most relevant for them, you know, and that's always different. So it's always great to see And then I am writing. I've been writing for about a year and 4 months. The book, The 13, and that is nearing its initial completion before like the editing and certain drafts and more logistical stuff. And that will be a 13-week process where you go through not just the book, but a series of guided contemplations, videos that dive into each chapter and explain it with a more metaphoric visual representation, and a list of beliefs to inquire, to take every single chapter that's based in a different area of your life and look at the most common unconscious beliefs that would keep us from really letting ourselves shine through in that area and have that reflected back to us. So it's an entire educational learning and unlearning experience that uses, audio, visual, reading. I mean, as many, even music, we're thinking of integrating. So really trying to get a very holistic experience. And that is going to be, in a sense, the next time we launch the 13, which is our you could say like our flagship experience. That will be the program that you go through, and then for some of those that sign up, there will be a 5-day retreat leading after the 13 weeks. So look out for that as well. And yeah, I do one-on-one sessions, and all that information's on my website.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes as well. That book sounds amazing. Really, really amazing. Looking forward
Thank
to
you.
seeing the
Yeah,
final.
thank you. Yeah,
But
it's been such a challenge to write and
yeah,
so
I can
rewarding,
imagine.
and shows me where I'm confused of things, and then I go into that and come back. It's just been this mirror. So it's been great.
Yeah. Do you have any last words for our listeners?
Nothing's coming, not this
Mm.
moment.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such an honor. So
Well, thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Yeah, I appreciate it. This is such a great, very multidimensional conversation. Like we got to just hit on a whole range of subjects. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate it and hope we can do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.